All right, it's time to go live. Ha! It's Friday. It's 4 o'clock. So this is number 4, and I'm really having a great time spending an hour with you all on Friday afternoon. Still out there looking for the opportunity to change the time or the date. This week was not good. I did get one vote in the survey on the YouTube channel. I got a vote for Saturday, so perhaps next week we'll plug in Saturday and see how it goes. I'm kind of open to changing things up and switching things around. But I thought we would talk a little bit about where we are with technology and business innovation and solving problems and really mistakes with businesses and technology in general. Because it's an interesting thing to talk about. You know, part of the reason I got into technology from the very beginning was that I had a pretty good acumen around business principles, around doing business things. And I took a test, it was probably like beginning of high school. It said I'd be really good at doing business things, but that I'd be kind of bored doing it. And I kind of took that to heart, and I thought about, what are the ways that I could do the business thing, the thing that I'm good at, and combine it with the other thing that I need, which is constant change, evolution, and that really led me to technology. So this week I've been thinking about all of the ways that businesses use technology and what happens in the business space. One of the interesting things that has happened for me is building technology is a lot of fun. I really enjoy that opportunity, and I've learned a lot in the process. And one of the things that I've really taken to heart is that you can have the absolute best technical team. You can have the sharpest technology people. You can have the best technology. You can solve amazing problems with technology, but if you're not solving the right problem with technology, you've really not done anything. And what does that mean to solve business problems? What does it mean to use technology to solve business problems? So I thought we'd talk a little bit about this sort of challenge that we have each and every day. I mean, really, the truth is that businesses adopt technology because it solves a problem. And we have to constantly keep this in focus. It is absolutely possible that we get excited about a new technology and that becomes a thing unto itself. And what I want to talk a little bit about today is why it's probably good for us to think about how we're going about doing that. And I think the framework can really help with that a little bit. So I'll start off the discussion today. We'll talk through some of the content in the presentation I've got for you. And then, the other thing I'd like to do is talk through a little bit about how AI can help us to accomplish these greater goals. Because that's really the fun part of this for me, to be totally honest. I spend a lot of time every week. I get literally dozens of newsletters, some of them paid. I've got lots of sources of information where I'm learning about the kinds of use cases and capabilities that people are applying AI with. And, we just have an open time, play around in ChatGPT a little bit. Yesterday I dropped a reel on Facebook because some of the discussion this week has been around where we are with the maturity of AI. Bill Gates had a comment about maybe we've hit some sort of a local maximum and the next version of GPT is not going to be substantially better. And then the other part of the dialogue this week has been how good is the AI that we have today and how widely understood or experimenting with these available AI tools today has been done across the board, even with people that are charged with the job of managing innovation for their companies. I was a little surprised, and so that kind of changed what I was thinking about for doing this week's time. So if you're here, hang out a little bit. We're going to jump into ChatGPT a little bit later. Unfortunately, my experiment last week with the phone and trying to share that with you did not translate well to the live video. I actually wound up cutting the iPhone piece out of the video, and I haven't found a good way to solve that problem yet. I've got something I'm playing with that might solve it, and if we have time at the end, maybe I'll give that a shot. We're going to solve it one way or the other. But in the meantime, let's dive into business mistakes with technology, because I think there's some really interesting things to share with you in the space in terms of using the technology. So let me get my environment set up here. We'll just flip over to and the technologies that they've used over time. Kodak, surprisingly enough, actually invented the digital camera. Now, this story has actually been repeated a number of times, and I'll share some of those stories with you as we go through the remainder of the slides. But this is an important point to focus on, because it's not simply a matter of having the smartest people to develop the technology. There is a point at which a decision has to be made around the organizational strategy, around the business agenda, around how the capabilities and solutions are developed in the market. And I think it's really important for us to think about not just things from a technology perspective, but also what it means from a business perspective, because we cannot lose sight of that as we are developing these solutions. And this is really a big part of the mistakes framework, what drove me to create the framework. Blockbuster is another really great example. They were so entrenched in the retail store model and the late fees. I was a customer of Blockbuster, and I will tell you that my least favorite thing about Blockbuster was, in fact, the late fees and how they managed that process. It was not putting the customer first. It was driving the bottom line, and it was that very same sweet payment that Blockbuster was getting in late fees that caused them to sort of ignore the disruption that was being put in play by Netflix. And of course, we all know how this story ended up. So this is another case of a business model disruption. The same happened with Nokia. Oddly enough, my first cell phone that I bought for the cell phone number that I have today was a Nokia. It was the most popular. It was the most capable and convenient device that was available at the time. There were some more expensive offerings that were available, but nothing was quite as rugged, durable, or convenient as the Nokia phone was in that era. And of course, that was before the era of the iPhone. This was a contemporary to the BlackBerry, which I was never a user of because I wasn't in the business world at the time. And it wasn't too much longer that I actually was using both a Nokia phone and a Palm Pilot, because that was what I called my auxiliary brain. It's tremendously useful before it, of course, got merged into the concept of a smartphone, which didn't start with Apple, of course. They came up with some ways to perfect it, and the rest is history, of course. Xerox is probably my favorite one to talk about. I like to talk about Xerox for a couple of reasons. One, because they have invented so much of where we are today from a modern personal computer perspective. And this may be something that most people aren't even necessarily aware of. Xerox PARC, and that was the Palo Alto Research Center, actually developed what we understand today, what we're familiar with from a graphical user interface on a PC. Now, a lot has happened since the creation of the PC user interface environment. A lot of us are familiar with mobile tablet devices that include touch interfaces. But, oddly enough, even Apple today in their OS X still hasn't fully implemented the touch interface for their PC operating system. I honestly, every time they have an OS announcement, I'm expecting them to add it to OS 10, but it hasn't happened yet. But the reality is the idea for the user interface that we know today in Mac OS 10 or Windows, save the touch interface on a tablet, was literally invented by Xerox. And they built a computer called the Alto. And for a variety of reasons, Xerox did not use the research that was developed by their own in-house innovation teams to distribute and sell. What they did do, however, was allow external folks to come in and look at them. And two noted individuals, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, were brought in to the Palo Alto Research Center and had a chance to see what this Alto 3 developed at Xerox PARC looked like. And it included the user interface. It also included what we call WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. Now, that doesn't mean a lot to many of you today, but that was basically the idea of what you see on the screen is what will be printed on the page. That was an invention unto itself. And, oddly enough, the mouse. The mouse was also invented at Xerox PARC. So a lot of really incredible things came along because of that. And this is just a few examples of companies that were on the verge of technological disruption, and for a variety of reasons, it's usually not just one, they chose not to adopt the technology or bring it to market. In the case of Xerox, they had some internal organizational conflicts that led to them not bringing those innovation to the marketplace. And this is why we need to talk about business innovation, because it's not enough to use high technology. You have to do the right things. And here's another case in point. Yahoo, again, very innovative company, really did some amazing things. It's still out there today. In fact, I have friends that still use Yahoo Mail. They did not have the wherewithal to acquire Google or Facebook. They let that domination happen, and one thing led to another, and while they had an opportunity, they let it pass. And you know the rest, right? Google and Facebook are all over it today. And Yahoo, not so much. You don't hear a lot from Yahoo these days. They still exist as an organization, but they are just a small portion of what they were years ago. I think the lesson I want everyone to take away from this is that you can make mistakes without technology. In fact, the reality is the technology only amplifies the level of mistake that's possible. You can make a critical error in adopting a technology. You can make a critical error in choosing how to apply a technology. You might decide to ignore a technology completely, but the truth is what you need is a framework that can help you. Frameworks are our friends, and in my internet travels, one of the really wonderful frameworks that I've come to know and learn came from a fellow by the name of Tony Seba. He's been talking about technology disruption for quite some time. He's got a YouTube channel, and he's done a lot of work with energy and transportation. I'm a fan of some of the more recent technologies. I have a Tesla system on my house, and I love to say that I have the only Tesla that pays for itself. That's still the case today. The solar panels and Powerwall setup that I have on my home, part of the reason I decided to do that was that it was eventually going to pay for itself over time. And that seemed to make a great deal of economical sense. You know, I don't know that I'm going to live in the house long enough to fully get there, but with the way that things are going, it's happening faster and faster, and it's more and more likely that not only will it pay for itself, but it will continue to produce well beyond that day with me living here to reap that benefit. But Tony really has talked about some pretty incredible evolutions from a technology disruption standpoint, and he's developed this really great framework that covers some core dimensions of how to understand a disruption and how to turn it to your advantage, because disruption happens all the time, but there are some very predictable things that go along with that disruption. And I'm not going to go into detail on Tony's framework today, but there are frameworks out there that can help us to solve problems and do the right thing. And it is those frameworks that I've been exposed to all throughout my career. And, the reality is there are a lot of frameworks that can do some really valuable things. But when it comes to the way that we are adopting new technology for ourselves, there is a specific set of practices that are particularly valuable. And so that's part of the reason I created the mistakes framework. And the line that I'm using today is that you can learn from mistakes with AI, because the core centerpiece of what I'm sharing with you, what I'm giving away, is the mistakes framework. Because you need a way to understand and apply not just the AI to the work that you want to do, but ensuring that the work that you are doing is adding the value. See, in my 25 years, I've been able to really collect and understand not only how technology is conveyed for business value, but how to analyze, understand, and predict where the value can be found and brought to bear for solving real technology problems. The earliest part of my career was building websites, turn of the millennium, when the internet was a brand new thing and many businesses needed to find a way to take advantage of this new thing called the World Wide Web. Many years in that space then led to opportunities for an advanced education for me. I went back and got my graduate degree and had an opportunity then to move into infrastructure. And I did infrastructure for quite some time, understanding how all of the pieces come together for all of these great big technology systems that we use to be leveraged by an enterprise organization. And then for the last 4 or 5 years, I've been focused on innovation things. So I went from very slow, long-term projects in infrastructure to very short-term, going fast, doing small things with proof of concepts and validations and the tracking of emerging technologies. I've always been excited about emerging technologies, and honestly, it was my favorite course in grad school. And that's part of the reason why I built the framework, because doing innovation is what really allowed me to sort of perfect these ideas and bring them together and consolidate them. And what I'm sharing with you is how to create value systems with AI in conjunction with a framework that helps to guide the actions that you're taking, so that you are sure to be creating value, but then we're able to leverage AI to help us do that even more quickly than we could before. Because the truth is, the biggest challenge that we face in terms of innovation isn't simply doing the work, it's also facilitating all of the creative parts. Creating something in terms of taking a guess, trying things out, because oftentimes we don't know what the answer is, and the only way to find out is to do experiments. So the mistakes framework is really intended to lower the complexity in the process. It's part of what we can do in terms of making things simpler and less complicated for us to understand, and also helping us do it more rapidly and not delay, not to wait an unnecessarily long period of time. And honestly, part of the reason I love the framework is this idea of mistakes, because the truth is, in order to find the way that it does work, you're going to have to find some ways that it doesn't work, and that means you'll make some mistakes. But that's part of the process. That's part of the growth. We have to make mistakes so that we can understand how it doesn't work, so that we can find the way that it does work. Now, this is the graphic I've been using to represent the framework. And what's important to understand about this graphic, what's illustratory of the framework, is this idea of moving through each of the letters and back through each of the letters when you understand that you've moved too quickly through the steps and you need to go back and make an update to a previous step that you've completed before. So M is the first letter in the framework, and it represents the concept of a map. And it is, in essence, this contextualizing of what's happening. Because when we talk about business innovation, it's not just the technology that you're using for the business processes. It is well beyond that. See, there are many things that come together in order for a business, in order for an organization to create value. And understanding all of those component parts and how they can influence the path in the future is really valuable. Having a technology solution that solves that is really wonderful, but it can quickly become irrelevant if you don't understand how the parts are able to come together. And we've seen this repeated throughout history. More recently, one of the challenges that we've experienced as consumers is shortages around supply chain disruption, and understanding where we get our stuff from and how it gets to us. Understanding what can influence those supply chains is an external factor. Now, there are things that we can do to control that, and we can use technology to enhance our position in terms of being able to sustain or reliably build a system that allows less disruption. The challenge there, of course, is the more complete the system is, the more resilient it is. It often means that there are component parts that have to change. But if you can understand not only your own processes, but the environment that is immediately surrounding those processes, it's often quite simple to identify the key pieces that really matter, and then you can optimize your system around those variables and those components. And that is the fundamental concept behind MAP. Now, when we understand mapping, it enables us to begin creating strategies that lead to achieving the outcomes that we desire. It's not enough to think about how the surrounding environment is. It's not enough to have a strategy. We have to be thinking through the problem in its entirety, and mapping helps us to more completely do that. Once we have a map to the environment, to the externalities, to our own systems and processes, then we can begin to look for ways to create the outcome that we are desiring. And this is where the work really begins. Creating the map is really, honestly, a lot of guesswork. And that work is kind of never done. And so in adopting the mistakes framework, we want to get to the part of the equation where we're investigating, where we're conducting some research to understand the approach that we're going to take in creating that value. The map is going to give us some ideas of where we can create value and the parts and components that need to come together in order for that to happen. But the research can then help us to confirm if we're on the right track. Now, oftentimes when we conduct research, there are opportunities for us to search for something specific and confirm what we think to be true, overlooking the things that might get in the way. But the reality is this investigate phase is really here to give us that value creation confirmation, just enough for us to confirm that it's time to move on to the next step. And as we move from map to investigate, what's going to happen is we're going to unlock the secret to creating value, because now we have an opportunity to confirm what we think is going to happen, and we can create a way to execute that as we move through the remainder of the mistakes framework to really confirm not just from a research perspective, but from a performance, from an outcome, from a hypothesizing standpoint, we can understand if what we think is going to happen actually does happen. Now, in order for us to continue the journey, we have to begin taking action. And part of that action is taking the ideas that we have and turning them into concepts that we can share and discuss with others. And Sketch is really a wonderful way to illustrate this. It's not uncommon for people to talk about the idea of writing something on the back of a napkin. Many businesses have started that way because it was the most rudimentary way that someone could capture and share an idea. And oftentimes this is in front of a meal, and a napkin happens to be handy. You just need a pen or a pencil to pull out and make some notes on your napkin. So this idea of Sketch is ideally quite rough. Now, you can take sketches and really deeply develop a sketch, but the reality is you only need to do enough to begin to visualize what it's going to look like. But it's not enough for you to capture what it's going to look like. You also need to begin thinking about not only how it's going to look and how you're going to interact with the thing that you want to create, but also understanding how those pieces are going to come together. Now, I'm a big fan of programs like Lean, Six Sigma, and process optimization, and a lot of those concepts and programs really revolve around optimizing the way that you make something. And I think that, it's important to get deeper into how you're thinking about not just creating the object for the first time, but how you're going to scale and sustain that over time. The challenge here, though, is that we can go too far in thinking about these problems. They do need to be worked on and thought about, but the reality is you don't want to scale something that doesn't work. So the sketch phase is really about capturing the idea and beginning to understand it for yourself and helping someone else understand it. And that's where we get this idea of see it before you build it, so that you have a way to be logically thinking about it before you begin to build it. And we typically use the language of prototype to define that. Now, once you have a prototype in place, you're going to be testing that. And the key here is working with someone else to validate the ideas. You have in your own mind a hypothesis about how this is going to be received, and the only way to really test that is to put it in front of someone else. And so the concept of a prototype is really used in conjunction with a test, so that you can validate or invalidate, as the case may be, what it is that you're trying to build. Because we don't want to go too far in developing that idea if it doesn't have merit in the eyes of a potential customer. So now we're talking about rigorously testing our ideas and doing things that will allow us to be more certain that what we're going to spend our hard effort and time upon is actually going to get the result that we desire. And oftentimes, in fact, on virtually every project I've ever worked on, there is some amount of adaptation that has to be done. Whether that is the functional implementation needing to change, whether that is the change in the desired outcomes, whether that is the timeline of the program. That's probably the most common that I've experienced. Any way you slice it, there is some amount of adaptation that needs to happen throughout the program. And so this is part and parcel of the framework. But it's deeper than that, because what we want to do is we want to get to the adapt as quickly as possible, moving from sketch to test into adapt, so we can understand where we need to go back and make a change in order to derive the most effective path in generating sustainable value. Again, it's the concept of realizing maximum value, because for our customers, for our partners, we want to have an exchange of value that realizes the need. Okay, now Kickstart is kind of a convenient implementation, because this idea of Kickstart is twofold. One, it's starting before you're really ready, and the other is it is enabling you to refine your ideas without waiting for every detail to be implemented. And as a recovering perfectionist, Kickstart is absolutely essential. I can tell you with absolute authority that there are things that you can do to implement and test and put it in the hands of someone that can use it and understand its real value without having to go through a great deal of rigor. Now, there are industries where there are limited amounts of testing that can be done. Obviously, there is testing that has to be done. In some cases, medical devices have to go through years of rigorous testing and analysis in order to ascertain if they are doing what is desired and not doing what is undesired. But even for those medical devices, there is an amount of creating something in order to validate and ensure that you're on the right path and creating real value. So this concept of Kickstart really is where our strategy begins to make a direct connection for our customers, where we're able to observe in some sort of a real scenario the value that can be created so that ultimately we're creating value. And, you know, from my DevOps days over the last decade and change, one of the things that I got really excited about as a developer and infrastructure person was the question that asked, how long does it take you to deploy code to production? And that was an important question because if you are not able to make a change in software and put that to use, you're not making a change that matters. If the change you've made never gets put into production, there's no additional creation of value. And you need to be asking the question, was that change even necessary in the first place? It's this first principles idea that the best part is no part, and using that to sort of guide if you're doing the right thing. That gets us into evaluate, which is where we're in the phase after some amount of implementation that is really focused on measuring where we are. Because if you're successful in solving a problem, we also need to know how successful it is. Because the reality is that we're going to continue to develop that product. If you followed the framework as intended, you will not have a complete product at the Kickstart phase. You will be looking at a product that is some sort of minimum implementation that continues to be enhanced. And understanding how we're going to measure the success is vitally important because we will need to be evaluating those continual changes that we will be making to determine if we are adding value with each change that we make. And this is where the essential discipline of measurement comes in. If you're not measuring it every time you make a change, how do you know you've made a positive change and not a negative change? And of course, all of these brought together then bring us to a place of sustaining the value creation, because there are all sorts of factors that change the value proposition of the work that we've done. No marketplace is completely static because there is an element of dynamics to everything. If everything else remains the same, we have to contend with the change in time. Each day, we're all a day older, right? Time is always a moving target. So you have to put in place some mechanisms that help you to ensure that you're creating value and you're doing it in a sustainable way. And if we've done the work the right way, we can move through the mistakes framework to continue sustaining that value creation. We may take where we are with a product or a service today and break out a component of that and do a sub area extract. Go map how we see that sub component, investigate how we can evolve it, then sketch out what the new implementation of that could look like. Share that story with our consumers. And, you know, particularly if you're building a software capability, right? You don't want to just push that change to your users without understanding how valuable things are today. And leveraging the framework to target and understand your customer is really one of the things that is tremendously valuable in bringing all of these pieces together And you're, again, going to make mistakes along the way, but you're going to move through each letter of the framework to ensure that the step that you are taking is done in a sequential manner, that you are measuring the right things at each phase of the process, and that you never drop the ball. Well, I was having a great discussion with a developer friend recently, and we were talking about this concept of a product launch in the software space. And I likened this concept of a product launch very much logically to an example, NASA mission control. You know, when we launched the Apollo moon missions, you had the countdown to launch, but you weren't done when the rocket left Earth. In fact, in the case of going to the moon, you were just getting started. That was not the end of the work. That was merely the beginning. But the amount of work it took to actually get to a rocket that could leave Earth's gravity and be well on its way to the moon was an incredible undertaking, an incredible success, right? But that wasn't the whole story. You have to keep moving in order to ensure that all of the work and effort you put into that launch is still creating value. And so a tool like the mistakes framework is really essential to that. And, you know, the kind of the takeaway that I want to give you today is this idea that we need to think about business outcomes as the biggest part of what we're doing. Now, as a technologist, I may not be doing business analysis as the lion's share of my work, but that business analysis, understanding where we're headed and the outcome that we are desiring, has to remain principal and focus. And then all of our decisions really connect back to that. From an organizational dynamic standpoint, everyone needs to understand what that business outcome desire is, and we need to help them understand how to connect back to that. And the way that we do that from an innovation perspective is by understanding the use cases that we can apply technology to. If we understand what the business needs are, what the use cases of the business is, then we can drill down and extrapolate from those business outcome use cases how we can apply a given technology to create value. And in the case of artificial intelligence, we're starting with the business outcome. Then we're moving into the use cases, and we are finding where the business and the AI use cases come together to really create value for the organization. And we're going to use frameworks to ensure that we are going into that the right way, that we're thinking completely about the problem, and that we're not walking into something that is a total unknown. In fact, the framework helps us to be much more confident as we move through the steps that what we're working on is going to generate value for the business and not simply be doing technology for technology's sake. And if you're interested in this kind of a program, let me encourage you, drop by the courses site, courses.ai-mistakes.com. You can sign up to join the wait list there. In not too much longer, we'll be starting another cohort of folks to get in and really understand not only how to apply the mistakes framework, but exactly how we can use AI to accomplish creation of value from a business perspective. And, you know, for me personally, I'm using AI today to basically quadruple my productivity. I can honestly tell you that the ways that I'm able to use AI in the work that I do each and every day really has allowed me to put off the need to hire an external party to help me get my work done. And it continues to improve. I think that we're far from done in that scenario. And if you want to learn more details about how to do that, sign up for the course. I think you'll find there's a lot of value to be realized there. But after we've talked about the framework a little bit, I just want to spend some time today playing around with the AI, kind of having a discussion about where that is adding value and what we can do with that. And let me just get the screen reorganized here. I'll change over to ChatGPT. If there are no questions from the group today, I'll go ahead and jump into ChatGPT. Let me get my screen reorganized here so I can share my screen out. And I'm gonna pull up a couple of different windows here in ChatGPT. I'll hide my bookmarks so they're not in the way, and give you a chance to see what I'm sharing here. We're going to do screen sharing. That's the one we're looking for. All right. So we've got ChatGPT up on the screen now, and there's a couple of things that we can talk through here. ChatGPT has been a tremendous tool for me, and what's interesting about it is, as I was sharing at the beginning of the discussion, there's been two major news items that I've become aware of this week. The first was that Bill Gates thinks that we're at a moment that the next version of GPT won't be substantially improved. He has access to information and insights that I don't, so I can't possibly argue with the statement that he's made, because for all I know, he's already seen GPT-5 and actually knows the next version that OpenAI is going to release is in fact not better than what's currently available. But what I know is what I've had a chance to use, and what I've had a chance to use is GPT 3.5 and GPT 4. Now, I have been paying for ChatGPT Plus basically from the very first offering of the service, because I was using GPT 3.5 on the free service multiple times a day, every day. And all of you that were jumping in there to try it out were honestly getting in my way. My queries were not succeeding, and I didn't appreciate that. This was a tremendous acceleration to my ability to get work done. And so signing up for Plus was a way for me to circumvent that delay and get my work done. And what's happened over time is that OpenAI has continued to develop the product, and they've added new capabilities that have really kept me around. I'll be honest, I've been looking for a time when I could turn off the pay service because I didn't feel like I needed to do it in perpetuity, but I've not done that yet. In fact, I'm at the point now where ChatGPT isn't the only service that is a pay service that I am using to leverage AI capabilities. I'm using multiple different services, and we can talk some more about that at a later date if some of you are interested in learning about all of the AI tools that I use. But I'll just come clean and tell you, look, I'm a Plus user. I have been. Perhaps someday I won't be, but it's looking less and less likely like that will be the case because of the new capabilities that have been added. And the first of those that we'll talk about, you may or may not have seen this ability to use a plugin. Plugins are really a wonderful extension of ChatGPT because you can use it with a specific tool. And the one I've got turned on here to share with you is PaperPile. It's a plugin that actually allows us to do some research and search scientific papers. So this is a place where, look, the reality is sometime last year, the volume of new research papers that were being produced on a daily basis just on AI became so enormous that it was factually impossible for any person to understand all of the developments that were happening in the AI space. And so being able to search and index and interact with and look at those things is really quite amazing. And so it was a few weeks ago, there was a paper that was released, and I talked about it a little bit on the channel a few weeks ago, this study about the jagged edge. So I'll run a quick query. Let's see if it can find the jagged edge with AI paper, because I think there might be something interesting there. Now, I don't know why we're having a connection problem, but that does occasionally happen. But we just hit the button and redo it. Okay, so now it's asking me to confirm that I know what the heck I'm talking about. Let's see if I can refine my query and make it a little bit better. There was a paper that worked with Boston Consulting Group analysts in using AI to accelerate their work. It used the term jagged edge. It also referred to users of AI as cyborgs and centaurs. Can you find this paper? Now, I actually have this paper already. I've downloaded it. I could pull it up. It wouldn't be a problem, but I think, being able to demonstrate the use of a tool like this is really what I'm after today. And I don't know why this is having trouble. We'll switch back over to that other tab. Try again. Sometimes you just have to retry it. All right, here it is, and it has found the paper. This is the right paper. Navigating the Jagged Technological Frontier, Experimental Evidence of the Effects of AI on Knowledge Worker Productivity and Quality. So now it's giving us the abstract to the paper. This was a paper that was published this year. It is a brand new paper, and it was done with a number of professors from some very well-known universities, one of whom I follow. If you're reading the newsletter, and if you're not reading the newsletter, go sign up for that right now, newsletter.ai mistakes. If you go to ai-mistakes.com, you'll see there is a sign-up page on the homepage of the site that allows you to sign up for the newsletter. In the newsletter, I talked about some of the things that were discovered, and I've recommended one of the professors that participated in the study has a newsletter of his own, and he covers some of the details that are in the paper, but actually also added some additional information to what he shared in his newsletter. But the essence of this is that, I've been able to not only find the research paper that I was looking for, it's provided a detailed abstract for us to review, and it's provided direct links to get to that paper. And if I just click the link, it will open up that page for us, and I can further share that page with you, and we can look at the study. But I think what I want to do now is kind of move on to the next item I want to share with you. There is a really interesting book idea that came out. Oh gosh, I was probably in middle school, and in middle school we had this really great book, and and what you would search for Waldo. Now, I just went out and grabbed an image using Google search went looking for where's Waldo. Now, listen, I'm a 42-year-old guy. I probably don't see as well as I did a few years ago. Honestly, this is probably too small for even my youngins to look at and find Waldo. But what's interesting is that AI can do some pretty amazing things now. With the new version of the model that includes vision, you can upload an image and ask ChatGPT to analyze the image. The image that was getting passed around social media last week was of a parking district sign. There was so many signs about when you could park and when you couldn't park. Someone took a picture of the sign and asked it to tell them when they could actually park there, and ChatGPT came back with an answer. In this case, I've handed it the image of Where's Waldo, and it has suggested that Waldo can be found. He's near the center of the image, slightly to the left. So let's just see if we can zoom in here a little bit and find Waldo. Now, the center of the image is going to be somewhere in here, so let's see if we can find Waldo with it zoomed in a little bit. I don't see him. I'm going to take ChatGPT's word for it because I'm still not finding it. But it is absolutely incredible that you could upload an image like this and send it to ChatGPT and have it come back with an answer at all in order to find Waldo. New capability, and this is only available to paying subscribers. So you have to be paying for the pro level, the plus level of the service in order to get this vision capability. All right, so having covered the vision, I've got one more to share with you, and that is using the image creation capabilities that are built. I got to find the right tab here. Here we go. And listen, I've been using Midjourney since last year. I got really excited by the capabilities built into Midjourney. I've got a subscription to them, and I do still use Midjourney. But the ability to do image generation with DALL-E 3 has its own unique set of advantages. In fact, DALL-E 3 is doing something that is still very much a challenge for Midjourney. Midjourney can make some incredible images, and it is a valuable resource unto itself. I don't have any regrets in having signed up for that service. Now, will I renew it when my year is up? That is an ongoing question. But today, I'm going to continue it because it is creating value for me. But you can use DALL-E 3 to generate an image. And what's really fantastic about creating an image with DALL-E 3 is that you can ask it to generate an image that includes written words. So you can generate a poster or a flyer. Let's say we wanted to create an image of a person holding a sign that is protesting AI with the message, "Choose humans over machines." And let's see what it does. Now, what's going to happen, and this is unique, at least as far as I know, this is unique to generating an image with DALL-E 3. It will take your prompt and actually create a set of prompts to generate a series of images. So what I'm giving it is, I'm telling it what I want, and then it's actually going to generate the prompt that does the image generation. Now I had to reset things, so let me make sure DALL-E 3 is selected. Create an image of a person protesting AI. They are holding a sign that says, "Choose humans over machines." And let's see what it does. Now, they've continued to evolve and improve the service. They are constantly changing the way that this works. The very first day that I had the ability to generate images with DALL-E 3, it would give you 4 images at a time, and it would actually even show you the prompt that it was creating for those images. And as the service has evolved, they no longer show you the prompts that they are creating for those images, and it's now only generating 2 images. Now, in this case, it got it 99% of the way, but had trouble. It put too many eyes in machines for the first image. But here you have a person, and that's pretty clearly a person, right? They've got the right number of fingers. That's been a challenge for AI generation over time. But being able to produce written signs that include full words written properly is absolutely amazing. This is so far beyond where we were even last year. One of the reasons I got into generative AI was I had the opportunity to begin working with Stable Diffusion because it was completely open sourced. Now, I had been working with DALL-E a little bit because I was already in OpenAI's lab environment playing with their various models. And I got a few opportunities to play with their image generation, but it wasn't something that I really felt the need to pay for. But I got really excited when Stability AI released Stable Diffusion because I could do it as much as I wanted, and I had the graphics cards in my computers at home that would basically allow me to do that all day long, uninterrupted. And we made some really interesting images, and it did take quite a bit of iteration and work to get something that didn't look absolutely terrible. If you've seen the AI Mistakes website, you know that I generated an image with Stable Diffusion for a laboratory environment to demonstrate the concept of AI mistakes. And if you look at the image, there's lots of artifacts. It is not at all a perfect image. And here, again, you see that while it got it 99% of the way, it still isn't 100% right. The same is true with this image, right? Whose over machines? Well, that's not what I asked for. The letters, the sign should say choose humans over machines. So it totally took out the word humans and didn't complete the word choose on the sign. Now, we can actually go back and have it do it again. Let's create the second image again. And be sure that it includes humans and machines in the text. And let's see what it does. And now it should take what it did for that second prompt and use that, or at least ideas from that image in generating it. So what I'm expecting it to do is an illustration rather than a photograph. It'll be interesting to see if it replicates it from a demographic perspective and if the rest of the elements in the image are similar. Okay, now it's actually done a much better job, and I actually really like this image because it's got some robots and drone imagery in the picture that it's created, and it's 100% right. Choose human over machines. So that is a really great image, and this is available as a part of the service. Now, unfortunately, because of the problems we had last week, I don't know if this is going to work, but we're going to try it. We have just a few minutes left. I'm going to see if I can use this other tool I came across to share my phone screen. Let's see if we can get this to work. We'll go into ChatGPT. I'll bring it up on the screen. And let's see if I can share. We'll stop sharing that application. We're going to share the screen with a different. We're going to do. And we'll bring that over so we can see it. And now I'm going to turn on sharing my screen. All right. Let's see what happens. And there it is. And we got to share our screen again. Apparently changing the mode has caused it to leave. There we go. All right. And it looks like that image is not coming through for you. So even though I've got my phone is on the screen, it is not sharing it for you. Let's try one more thing here. And we have just a couple of minutes left, so it can't hurt to try. You know, part of the AI mistakes rules are we're going to try it and it might not work. Together, it's always an experiment. We want to try things and see how it goes. Putting things together can be a real adventure. Is not going to work. So using the phone to live, I can probably do a recorded session. It looks like that's what I'm going to have to do, having failed this experiment. But hey, thanks for coming along. I really enjoy covering these things, having a great discussion with you. And if there's something you'd like to see that we can talk about in conjunction with the framework, I'd love to do that live with you. And of course, I'm always looking for ideas to put on the video services. More ideas coming. I'm working on a new video right now. I'm actually really excited about one of the use cases and applications that I see with AI. So hopefully that'll come out in the next week or so. And in the meantime, look, go have a great weekend. And we'll see you next time. Go make some mistakes.